Chevre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark und freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong and happy physically and spiritually. Regards from the Rebbe Shchune. I'm now in Crown Heights, and I'm going to be here Mirz Hashem Baruch for the whole month of Tishrei, as is the custom for many, many decades, centuries, to come to the Rebbe for the high holidays. So, forgive me if today's lesson will be missing some components because I'm not at home. I don't have all the svarim that I usually have available to look into things, etc. We'll start as usual with a pasuk and a prayer which will be connected to what we're speaking about today. And today is Erev Rosh Hashana, Oil Erev Rosh Hashana. And the pasuk is from Kapitel Chav Zayin, Lecho Omar Libi, Bakshu Fonoi, Esponecho, Adinoi Havakesh, which says, on your behalf, my heart says, seek my countenance. Your countenance, Hashem, I seek. So, Bakshu Fonoi, countenance, could be translated as face, but those who learn Chassidus know that the Ponecha face is connected to Pnimius. And over here, the Rebbe, there's one year that the Rebbe wrote a letter for Rosh Hashana, and the whole theme of the letter was the idea of Bakshu Fonai, which means go for Pnimius. Look always for the inner dimension on every single level. For example, if you have a rabbi or a leader, don't see people the way they seem externally. Understand that beneath the surface, they have a neshama. Look for the neshama, seek for the neshama, etc. And the same thing in general in life. We shouldn't be shallow, superficial people. When you hear a story, think about the message. Think about what the lesson is trying to teach you. In every single situation in life, look at what's behind the surface and try to understand the inner workings of things. Go for Pnimius. That's what it means, Bakshu Fonoi. So too, when we speak about Hashem, seek for the inner dimension of Hashem. The relationship, etc. The same thing is in serving God. It's not mechanical, it's not rote, it's not only about the actions, it's about the meaning, it's about the purpose, it's about the feeling, etc., etc., etc. In every single situation, look deeper. The same thing is in life. A person could be doing things all day long, but there's no purpose behind it. But then you have a person who lives with purpose. There's an inner dimension to everything that's going on in his life. That's Bakshu Fonai. And we connect that straight away. We'll connect it to Rosh Hashana soon. And we connect it straight away with this week's Parsha. There's a Chassidish taich in the words, Hazinu Hashamayim. Literally means the heavens should listen. The sky. But there's a Chassidic taich interpretation. Hazinu Hashamayim. Always listen for spirit, for heavenly things. Listen for the inner message. Listen for what Hashem is telling you. Look at the world and see the messages and hear the sound of spirituality. Okay, today we're going to talk about Rosh Hashana. And really, we should speak about Yontiv Shel Rosh Hashana Shecholi is B'Shabbos. The holiday of Rosh Hashana that falls on the Shabbos is the first day we do not blow shofar. But the truth is, everyone is speaking about it this year. So, there are much far, far greater people than me that are giving talks about it. So, just go online. You'll find right at this very minute 25 lessons on that subject based on the Rebbe's famous talks on the subject. So, go there. I'd rather talk about something which is more basic, but at the same time more fundamental. So many of the things we're going to speak about today you heard about before, but maybe you never heard it all put together exactly in this way. So let's talk about Rosh Hashana. Obviously, as we spoke many times, a Jewish holiday is not just recalling events that took place a long, long time ago, but we actually re-experience those events. And also, obviously, we have to take the lesson. So, this is also spoken about by many people, by the Jewish nation, in Yiddishkeit, in Judaism, when we say New Year's Eve, it's not about a party, it's not about getting drunk, it's not about letting your hair down or shedding your inhibitions. It's a whole different world. But what is Rosh Hashanah? Happy New Year's. What is New Year's? When we look in the Torah, and it says the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, it says there's a commandment to blow the shofar, and it's also a remembrance of the first day. So, on one level, we want to talk about, mistakenly to say, it's recalling events from a long, long time ago. So we'll say, it's recalling when the world was created. Or to be more specific, the day Adam Harishon was created. Fine. So that's one idea of Rosh Hashanah. There's another idea of Rosh Hashanah, which goes together with the word that we say in davening, Hayom Haras Olam, which has two interpretations. One interpretation is, Hayom Haras Olam, today is the day of the world's creation. But then there's another translation, Hayom Haras Olam, today the world trembles, because it's a Yom Hadin, it's a day of judgment. It's considered the judgment day when a person, his actions of the previous year are looked at, and we stand before the court, and it's going to be judged whether it will be a year which you see revealed goodness in abundance, or chas v'sholom not necessarily so. That's another dimension, an aspect of the Yom Tov of Rosh Hashanah. But according to Chassidus, talking about Pnimius, it's a whole different story. Most of you have heard already before, there was a very famous rabbi, the Rosh Hashiva, the dean of Yeshiva University, Rabbi Yosef Ber Soloveitchik, who's known as J.B. Soloveitchik, Rabbi J.B. Soloveitchik in the modern vernacular. And he said, he comes from a very famous family, the Brisk scholars, Ga'inim, and he had a Melamed in Chaslavich. He had a Cheder teacher in Chaslavich who taught him Gemara, but he was a Chabad Chosid, so he smuggled into the learning Chasidus. And Rabbi Soloveitchik has said this. He said this many, many times, that once he learnt with his Melamed the meaning of Rosh Hashanah, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Likutei Torah, he could never forget it. And it completely changed his perspective on how he's supposed to conduct himself, how he experiences Rosh Hashanah. And what was that? The idea, as all students of Chabad Chassidus know, that Rosh Hashanah is the day of the king's coronation. Hachtoras HaMelech. And he said over this point many, many times, but with slight variations. Sometimes he would say that one day his Melamed showed up and he said, you know what? Tomorrow night is Rosh Hashanah. What's Rosh Hashanah? What's Rosh Hashanah? The Coronation Nacht, the night of the coronation, when we place the crown on the king's head. And who places the crown on the king's head? Beryl, the shoemaker, and Shmerel, the tailor. That's a profound statement, as we'll discuss later also today. Number one, the idea that tonight, Coronation Nacht, Rosh Hashanah, we place the crown, Hashem's crown, on his head, so to speak. And who does it? All Jews. Not the ones who are necessarily the greatest scholars or the greatest saints, but just every single Jew, holich yelich, tradesman, tradesman, layman, etc. There's another word also that's brought down, I think, in the Friedrich Rebbe's writings, and he spoke what is meant to be the avodah of the month of Elul, and he said, what happens in the month of Elul? Men hebt on putzen the mundir of the coronation. We start polishing the uniform for the coronation. So this whole month, really, we're preparing ourselves for Rosh Hashanah, which is the coronation of the king. So what does this mean, that it's the coronation of the king? Why is it related to Rosh Hashanah? And how does this affect, like many things in Judaism, that it's the theme, it's the concept, the inner meaning that manifests itself in how we conduct ourselves and our actions of the day. For example, Rosh Hashanah, the custom by Chassidim is that we say much Tillim. But everyone says much Tillim. From the greatest scholar, who it might seem that his saying Tillim is wasting his time. He could be utilizing his brain to come up with new profound insights of Torah. Which you would say that since he's a super genius and he has such a great mind, let him use the mind to study and create new ideas in Torah. Which Hashem loves chidushim in Torah. So it's like, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. And here we say what you should be doing on Rosh Hashanah, say Tillim. That's one thing. The other thing was, there was no talking, no idle talk on Rosh Hashanah. Another thing was, and this is also unique, in Halacha, one of the only times where it discusses sleeping in, and like, you should be super careful about it, strict, not to sleep during the day. There's discussions, does it mean in the morning, does it mean in the afternoon? And even though if we look at Halacha, this sleeping is connected to the day of judgment, but according to Chassidus, it has a whole another dimension. So let's start off to understand all these things with what is the central theme of Rosh Hashanah. So far we spoke about that it's the creation of the world. So far we said also that it's Judgment Day. And now we mentioned coronation. How do we see that? We see that because throughout the davening of Rosh Hashanah, all the tefillos, we say, Melech al kol eilam b'chveidecha, rule over the world. Your kingship should rule over the world. We say that in davening. We also say every single bracha of Shemoneh Esrei. We finish off with Melech al kol eilam, Melech al kol haaretz. We also say in the after Shemoneh Esrei Ma'ariv, both nights, Kapitel Chav Dalet of Tillim, the David Mizmor, Mihu zeh Melech HaKoved. So again and again, the central theme that we say in our prayers of Rosh Hashanah is connected to the idea of Hashem as king. And this is based on a Gemara which says that Hashem says, Imru lefanei malchus, zechonis v'shofar, say the verses that are related to proclaiming Hashem king and talking about memory, remembrance, and verses of the shofar. So, this also has to be looked at. What is the connection between these three things? Shofars, blowing of the shofar, remembrance, and kingship. I don't know if we're going to cover everything in today's lesson. So now let's talk about Hashem being king. What does it mean that Hashem is king? So, first of all, when we say that Hashem is king, what does it mean that he's king? A king means that his presence is felt throughout the whole kingdom. Just like, for example, if you walked into a palace and you'd say that every single room of the palace, a person can sense it's the king's dining room. It's a dining room worthy of a king. It's a king's broom. The bristles are made out of gold. It's a king's bathroom. It's a king's hall, etc., etc. In other words, what's kingship? That from the idea that the king is a king has to be felt in every single particle, area, nook and cranny of the palace. And the same thing is true about the rulership of the king. The king is a ruler over the entire country, and his authority is sensed and felt throughout the entire country. Nowhere is there a part of the country where his authority is void. He's unlimited in his impact and influence on the country, and to every single person in the country, and to every single place of the country. So too Hashem desired Ana emloich. Hashem created the world, and He wanted it to be a dira b'tachtonim, a dwelling place for Him, and just like a king's dwelling place, the king's presence is felt in his dwelling place, in every single area of his dwelling place. So too, when it comes to the world, Hashem wants to be felt throughout the entire world. And that's what it means, Melech al kol ha'olam b'chveidecha. Kol ha'olam. The entire world senses how there's only Hashem. Hu levadihu ve'en zolosei. V'yeda kol pol ki ata pi'altei. Every single thing is aware of His presence. Every single aspect of creation cries out, Hashem, Hashem, Hashem. That's the idea. And that's what God desired. And that's what it means we make this world a better place, that God's presence is felt throughout the whole world. Okay. But now, what happens on Rosh Hashanah? On Rosh Hashanah, every single year, Hashem's interest in ruling reverts back to its source. Now, the fact that Hashem desired to be a king, that's something that He desired. It was His choice. But in truth, in essence, in a certain sense, we have to be so eternally grateful that He decided to be king, to create the world, to make this world a dwelling place for Hashem. Because when we think about what it means that He's creating a world, that itself is considered a descent, a tzimtzum. And as it says in the Zohar, Lav urcha de malcha lishtoi b'mila de yoita. The Zohar says concerning the 10 utterances that created the world, that it's not the way of the king to discuss mundane matters. The whole 10 utterances that created the world, compared to the level of God as God is, as Hashem is a descent, is a tzimtzum. In other words, like this, like we spoke many times, any title that you give to Hashem is already not Hashem in His essence. Not the Eibish to wie is Batzmusay, not the way the Eibish is in His essence, not wie sich mit Samtzing given, und Yerid given. So why? Simple. Say a word. Hashem as Beire, creator, Melech, king, Adon Olam, ruler of the world, conductor, manager, owner. Every single one of these words is talking about how He's impacting us. He's a king over a nation. Ein melech b'lo am. But if there's no am, there's no melech. That means that the whole word melech is not talking about the essence of Hashem. It's talking about how Hashem is ruling. He's in a relationship. He's in an association with something else. And the same thing is creator, that He creates something else. He created something. Not that it's separate from Hashem, Chas v'Shalom. So every single word that we're going to talk about, except for Shem Havaya, which I don't want to get into that now, ruler, judge, boss, these are all words that talk about how Hashem is impacting, how Hashem is influencing, and how Hashem is connected to something lower outside of Himself, so to speak, Kaviyachol. But what about Hashem in His essence? Who knows? We have no idea. All we could say is that we understand that there is a level of Hashem, as Hashem is in relation to Himself, which is beyond anything we can even utter and speak about. So now, let's go back. The first year, Hashem Kaviyachol aroused Himself, Halos Man Minei Bei, it's called, that He decided that He wants to rule, and He created the world. But that interest and that desire lasts for a year. It has a use by date. The use by date is till the next Rosh Hashanah. Erev Rosh Hashanah, that interest reverts back to its source, and then we have to ignite it, and we have to arouse it again. That was the whole point. The first time, obviously, to start the cycle, everything has to start with Hashem, so He created the world, and there was life force for the world for a year. But then, every single Erev Rosh Hashanah, that interest reverts, and then we have to reignite it. Now, what does that mean on our part? Since that means we have to go deep, deep into the essence, we have to go into that level. We have to imagine it's as if the Eibishter now is not interested. And we have to reignite that interest. So we can't go to a level how Hashem is actively involved in being king. We have to go to that level where he's like in isolation to himself, in his essence, and go there and reignite that interest and desire to rule. How do we do that? So over here we have the word of etzem nemt etzem. We have to dig deep into ourselves and make the coronation. As that Malamed said, we place the crown on the king because we are going to reignite his interest. How do we reignite his interest? When we show that we're ready to be loyal and dedicated to him 100%. Because when you stand before the king, you don't say, reporting for duty, sir, 50%. If you said that to a king, it will be off with your head. That means you have to show total loyalty. That you're not giving only a part of yourself to Hashem, because that's not going to reach deep. Essence takes essence. When you give of your essence, Hineni, and pledge absolute obedience, and absolute loyalty, and absolute devotion, coming from your very core, then it's going to touch his very core. So in other words, this is very similar to a concept that's spoken about in the Hasidic discourses of Shavuos, that we say that Shavuos is, we say, Nasa Koydel Nishma. We will do before we will hear. And it's explained what that means is that we're not listening to specifics. It's about, we say, Hineni. We're ready to do whatever you'll say. Because first, Kiblu Malchusai, Va'achrach Kiblu Gzereisai. First we say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Malikeinu Hashem Echad. We accept Hashem's authority. Then we can talk about the specifics and the details. And this explains something else. Another question, that even though Rosh Hashanah is from the 10 days of Tshuva, it's called Aseret Yemei Tshuva, starting from the first day of Rosh Hashanah till Yom Kippur. And the question is, we don't say Al Chet on Rosh Hashanah, but we say it in Aseret Yemei Tshuva, and we say it on Yom Kippur many times. So if Rosh Hashanah is from the Aseret Yemei Tshuva, how come we're not saying Al Chet? And the answer is, because it's, imagine we have a couple, and they're having difficulties. So there's one level where the couple says they're going to go to a marriage counselor, and then they're going to talk about what each spouse did that wasn't so pleasing to the other spouse and to their spouse, and they'll get into the details. I should make sure to clean up after myself. I should make sure to try to show you a smiley face. It's that I should stop complaining so much. Yada, yada, yada. That's one level. What happens if, God forbid, between two Jewish spouses, one says to the other, I don't want to go to a marriage counselor. I don't know if I'm interested in the relationship at all anymore. Oy vey, oy vey. That's a whole other level. What we're saying is, al derech zeh, is the idea of Rosh Hashanah similar. We're not talking about the specifics now. Chas v'sholom, Hashem is very, very interested. This is part of it's a certain dynamics and a cycle. But I'm just trying to explain why we don't say Al Chet on Rosh Hashanah. Because it's not what's called the Tshuva Protis. We're not dealing with the specifics. We're not dealing with the details. We're not dealing with Gzeroisai. We're talking about Kibul Malchusai. We're talking about the Etzem, the essential thing of, I'm yours. I've got your back. I love you. We want you. So that's a much more general and in a way deeper and more fundamental level of service. Because this is what it means on the Avodah of Rosh Hashanah that we're doing every day. The idea, every moment of the day of Rosh Hashanah is there's a melech, we're reigniting his interest to rule, and therefore we have to express our devotion, our loyalty, our servitude. And how do we do that? This explains everything that we do on Rosh Hashanah. What does it mean that etzem nem etzem? How do we reflect and project this idea that we're giving ourselves over completely to the king? One way is that we say Tehillim. This is the great equalizer. The Rosh Hashiva, the Dean, the scholar, the great mystic, the Kabbalist, and the simpleton. the postman, the delivery man, the construction worker, whoever. As Reb Yosef Ber Soloveitchik's Malamed said, Betel the shoemaker and Shmerel the tailor, and the Rosh Hashiva and the greatest rabbi are all equal. Because when we talk in relation to the king is someone who's completely incomparable, greater than everyone else. And in relation to the king, everyone is equal. That's the idea of a king. The whole idea of a king is that there's the king, and everybody else is exactly equal in relation to the king. There's no higher, there's no lower. And each one equally has to be completely subservient to the king. So therefore we all say Tillim. Tillim is not enjoyable. It's just, it's a sign how we're just simply devoting ourselves to the king. Everyone is doing an equal activity. Similar also to how we bow down in Musaf and Kodim. On Rosh Hashanah, there's the Pishut Yadayim V'Raglayim. We prostrate ourselves. And in Kippur many times. And the idea is, same idea. What does it mean you're prostrating yourself? That means that you're not serving God with your mind, with your head, with your so-called superior qualities. No! We show and we demonstrate how my mind and my feet in relation to Hashem is exactly equal. Excuse me. So that's the avodah of Rosh Hashanah. Similar. We're all prostrating ourselves equally before the king. Now we understand one more aspect. Getting to the sleep. So what happens when we call out to Hashem, essence to essence, and we have to reach his essence? And now this is connected to how we started today, Bakshu Fonai, because we're not talking about as Hashem is in his external level. No, he's reverted to his pneumius level. God as God is. Hashem Batzmusai. We have to reach that level. Go for pneumius. If you want to get pneumius, you have to give pneumius. If you want to get essence, you have to give your essence. That's what it means. Now, once we do that, and really there's another whole explanation how this is connected to Zechrenus, Zecher Abris. Us and Hashem are really two halves. And that's the reason, really, why we can reach that level. Because we come from that level. But we're not going to elaborate now on that point. Then we go to Shofars. I forgot to mention before that Avudram brings from other Rishonim, from other Goinim, that the idea of blowing of the Shofar, besides for the other themes connected to Tshuva, is the trumpets that we blow at a king's coronation. That's the main point of blowing the Shofar. And now, once we do all those things, so we explained Malchi, Zechrenus, and Shofars. What's a Shofar? Why is that connected to the coronation of a king? It's because, as Chassidus explains, a Shofar is just a kol pnima. It's a cry from the essence. It's not just words. Sometimes you have a primal cry that can't be put into words. And all the Tkiyah, Shvarim, Teruah, all associated with a sound that comes from your essence. Essence to essence. Each of these things is something which should be elaborated on, but we don't have time because we're running out. So I want to bring out another point. So once we successfully reached his essence, now it is reignited. So Chassidus explains that every Rosh Hashanah, usually this is accomplished through Ma'ariv, Tfilas Arvis, the first night of Rosh Hashanah. That's going to be accomplished this year. Also by the Tkiyah Shofar of the first day. This year we're not doing the Shofar, so things are accomplished anyways. Don't worry about it. But it doesn't take away anything that I spoke about, that this is the central theme of Rosh Hashanah. So what do we accomplish then? That we reignited Hashem's desire to continue. And the Alter Rebbe says, a Or Chodosh, a new light, comes down for Rosh Hashanah Tov Shin Pei Daled, that never was there before. But that's like, do the math. This is the renewed energy interest, desire for the whole upcoming year. So in 48 hours, we got an Ur Chodesh that came down, which is in 48 hours concentrated all the hours of the year, 8,770 hours. Something like that. So now we understand why it's so important not to sleep. Because actually it's brought down in the Yishalmi, if you sleep on Rosh Hashanah, your mazel will be sleepy. And as Chassidim used to say, if you sleep on Rosh Hashanah, you'll have a sleepy year. Because what you do on Rosh Hashanah, since it's 8,770 hours concentrate, so how you act on Rosh Hashanah impacts the entire year in a major way. Like a scratch on a seed compared to a scratch on a trunk of a tree. A scratch on the trunk of the tree is just a scratch. It's minor. But a scratch on a seed of the tree could be fatal and terrible. Same thing is over here. Besides for the fact that it's a day of judgment and therefore you should be very careful every single minute of Rosh Hashanah. In addition to that, we have the concentrated time. It's a fact. What you do today is going to have a huge impact for the rest of the entire year. Because right now, how you act in those concentrated hours, in those 48 hours, is really something which contains within it what's going to happen the whole year. And this is why Chassidus also explains why Rosh Hashana is called the head of the year. It's not called Tchilas Hashana, the beginning of the year. It's called Rosh Hashana, the head of the year. And this is another aspect. We don't call it New Year's. We say head of the year. And why? Chassidus says the point, similar idea. Just like the head contains the nerve center, the control of the entire body, the engine room, call it whatever you want. Everything starts from the head. The same thing is true about Rosh Hashanah. Everything that happens the entire year is contained and controlled and led by what happens on Rosh Hashanah. Because that's the new light that comes down, which contains in it the entire year. Therefore, it's Rosh Hashanah. So, this is what we have to be thinking about. It's a very, very serious, I don't want to say serious in contrast to happy, because that's not right. But I mean to say is, it's not a joke. We have to look inside ourselves and try to measure our level of devotion. You know, like sometimes, you know, like when you talk about life and you say, do you take learning seriously? Do you take your Rambam, Limud the Rambam seriously? Do you take your Daf Yomi seriously? Do you take anything in life seriously? How seriously do you take your relationship with Hashem? So it's very nice that we do things, we put on tefillin, we learn Torah, we give tzedakah, we do things. But how deep is it? Bakshufonai. Is this who you really are? Is this what makes you tick? Is this your bread and butter? And this is what Rosh Hashanah is all about. The entire time, during the 48 hours, you're focusing and concentrating on Melech Aleilom Kulei Bichveidecha. Hashem, you are the king. I'm standing before you. I'm yours. And this is what you have to ask yourself. Are you really his? And even though sometimes it might seem very daunting, am I becoming a tzaddik overnight? But you know what? There's a word that's repeated in the name of the Kotzker. And he said, Pischali kechudesh hamachat. Open me up a hole of a needle, the eye of the needle. And the Kotzker said on that, Pischali kechudesh hamachat. Open me up the hole of the needle, aber se darf sein durch und durch. Make space for Hashem. It might not be total, but at least it's authentic, it's thorough, it's through and through. And that's what Hashem wants. Make a resolution. By the way, the concept of New Year's resolutions comes from our Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, a person is meant to make a resolution how he can improve in certain areas of his life, in his spirituality and his spiritual growth and development. So let's all make some resolution. So sein durch and durch, that whole should be through and through, authentic and honest, for Hashem. And everyone likes to say Rosh Hashanah. So number one, Tavshin Pei Dalid. I hope today's lesson was Tehei Shnas, finer drushes. Good, we should have a year of good Torah classes, good Torah speeches, good Torah sermons. And then we see that the Rosh Hashanah of this year is connected to everything we spoke about it in all areas of serving Hashem. Tavshin Pei Dalet Tehei Shnas Ponecha Dershim. Pnimius Dershim. We're going for Pnimius, we're going after your face. Bakshufonai. But there's also connected to Torah, Tehei Shnas Psak Din, Tehei Shnas Piskei Dinim. That means we learn in a way that there's clarity. We come to know what to do, no wishy-washy, but a verdict that's clear and then stable. There's also for davening, Tehei Shnas Psuke de Zimra. We should daven with excitement. Psuke de Zimra means that our davening is with song and with passion and with heart. That's Tehei Shnas Psuke de Zimra. Tehei Shnas feierliche davening. It should be a fiery davening. And then for tzedakah, Tehei Shnas Poide Dalim, Pidyon Dalim, all those that are in a state of poverty, or they feel that they have lacking in their life, so that lacking should be filled with abundance of blessings, etc., etc. So the Eibusher should help. We should do our part. We're turning to Hashem, and we're saying, we're pledging allegiance with our totality, with our devotion, with a full heart, b'chol levavcha, v'chol nafshcha, v'chol me'edecha, and this will in turn bring Hashem to Taka, be meloich al kol elam kulei v'hoya, Hashem lemelech al kol oretz, b'yei mahu yeh Hashem echad u'shmei echad, the ultimate revelation of Hashem's kingship, begula amitis v'ashleima, take it from Yad Mamish, posting from the Shchuna, your friend, Erev Rosh Hashanah.